On January 26, 1983, the quiet calm along Lake Washington provided a stark contrast to the events taking place inside the nearby offices of the Seattle Seahawks. A new coach was assuming command of the franchise, a man named Charles Robert Knox.
We want to play Seahawk football. We want to play with a lot of pride and a lot of commitment. And that, I think, we will have. And I think that we've been in a couple situations that we've been successful in turning a couple programs around. Whatever it takes to win, that's the bottom line. And we expect to turn this program around. And we didn't come all the way out here not to get this job done.
Chuck Knox and the winning habit are two inseparable partners. When Knox entered the head coaching ranks in 1973, he took a losing Los Angeles Rams team and guided them to 12 wins and a division title. In 5 seasons with the Rams, Knox won 5 NFC Western championships. But it was in Buffalo where Knox truly proved his coaching abilities. He took a hapless Bills team bereft of talent and spirit, and in just 2 years led them to the playoffs. A year later, Buffalo won its first division championship since 1966. Twice named NFL Coach of the Year, Chuck Knox now comes to Seattle fully intent on making the Seahawks winners as well. The franchise that Chuck Knox will lead in 1983 is in much better shape than the one that began the 1982 season. At that time, the Seahawks were a troubled team, short of confidence and wary of a potential player strike that hung like an ominous shroud over the season's early games. In the opening matchup against Cleveland, the Seahawks were clearly not at their best. Despite a loss to the Browns, the Seahawks regrouped the following week at Houston. Late in the game, Seattle led 21-17 and appeared to have the victory clinched when number 45, Kenny Easley, intercepted an Oiler pass. Although Easley clearly had both feet in bounds on the play, the officials ruled otherwise. Houston kept the ball and eventually scored the winning touchdown that handed the Seahawks their second defeat. The next day, the possibility of a strike became a reality. For the first time in league history, regular season play was suspended, and the lights went out at the Kingdome for 57 days. When the strike finally ended, the Seahawks came back to find a new man in charge. Mike McCormick left his front office post to take over head coaching duties, bringing immediate improvement to team morale and on-field performance. In previous coaching jobs in Philadelphia and Baltimore, McCormick was known for the ability to communicate with his players.
If you want to go weak side, go the toss with left formation with him over there. Bolton's really knocking him off, so you won't be able to force as much.
McCormick brought these communication skills with him to Seattle, along with a reputation for being one of the most liked and well-respected men in the National Football League. The new Seattle coach cared about his players as athletes and as people.
I think Mike took a lot of pride in the way that he played his position when he was a player. On being intelligent, on not making mistakes. I think he expects that of his players. When he doesn't get it, he can be hard-fisted, and when he does get it, then he's appreciative. Appreciative to the point that he lets you make a few little decisions along the way, gives you a little freedom, and all in all, it's hard to find a better coach than Mike McCormick.
I think we have a coach now that's he relates to the players better, and I think he actually has a genuine feel for player-coach relationships. I think everybody here respects Mike and wants to do well for him and ourselves.
The fans didn't have long to wait to see the improvement. In the first game after the strike, the Seattle Seahawks went out and beat the Denver Broncos. The defense held Denver to only 10 points and even scored a touchdown of its own.
The Bird back to pass, deep drop. He's looking, he's got time, he throws over the middle. Incomplete, picked up by the Seahawks on his way. Schultz coming across from left to right. Touchdown Seattle, Bruce Schultz.
With the score tied at 10 in the final minute, the Seahawks made the play that gave them their first ever win in Denver.
Zorn drops back, getting the three-man rush. He cranks up, he throws deep for Largent up the left side end zone. Touchdown Seahawks to Largent. Largent in the end zone, 8 yards deep.
Seattle's 17-10 victory over the Broncos was tangible proof that the team had shaken off its early season woes. For the remainder of the year, the Seahawks under Mike McCormick would be competitive in every game they play.
Head to Seahawk programs now. Programs here, Seahawk programs.
With the resumption of the season and an impressive first win still fresh in their minds, the Seahawk faithful was eager to see their rejuvenated team. And by the end of that first afternoon back at the Dome, there wasn't a disappointed spectator to be found. The opponents were the unbeaten Steelers, but the Seattle defense kept one of the league's best offenses from scoring a single point. With the Steelers held scoreless, the Seahawks got all the offense they needed from a third-period touchdown.
Zorn straight back to pass, throws in the end zone. Touchdown Seahawks to Paul John.
A week later in Los Angeles, the Seahawks fell behind to the Raiders 28-0, and then scored 23 unanswered points of their own with touchdowns by Steve Largent, Theodis Brown, and Roger Carr. Only a last-minute interception prevented Seattle from completing what would mathematically have been the greatest comeback in league history. Returning to the Kingdome, rookie Byron Walker, number 89, helped the Seahawks get back in the win column with a 2014 decision over the Chicago Bears. The turning point of the game hinged on one of Seattle's trick plays, a quick kick executed to perfection with the help of number 80, Steve Largent.
Well, it was a play that we've had in our playbook for 6 or 7 years, almost since the beginning of the Seahawks, and we've never run it. And I'm lined up off to the right. Part of the ploy is Jim lines up behind the center, looks out to me, hollers my name twice, Largent, Largent, and that's part of the cadence. And then he says, hut. Dan Dornick receives the ball from the center and boots it down, and I run down to cover the punt.
Seattle's quick kick put the Bears in a hole from which they never escaped. Once more in 1982, trick plays were a familiar feature of Seahawk games. Many came from the special teams of Dufik, McAllister, Kuhn, Kawhi, Johnson, White, Flonis, Lane, and Thomas, who also compiled the second-best kickoff coverage in NFL history. Punt return chores were ably carried out by number 85, Paul Johns, who ranked second in the AFC. Punter Jeff West and kicker Norm Johnson performed well in their normal duties, but were also effective when the Seattle special teams had some tricks up their sleeve. The catalyst of every gadget play is number 10 holder Jim Zorn, who wasn't bad at quarterback either. Whether throwing passes from the pocket or running the quarterback draw, Jim Zorn was one of Seattle's most explosive offensive weapons. Zorn passed and ran behind a Seattle offensive line that showed marked improvement in the second half of the 1982 season. After some early experimentation, the line was finally set with starters that included third-year tackle Ron Essink and six-year pro tackle Steve August. The guards were second-year man Edwin Bailey and Baltimore Colt import Robert Pratt. Anchoring the unit was center John Yarno, completing an offensive line that gave Seahawk quarterbacks time to complete passes to running backs Sherman Smith, Horace Ivory, David Hughes, and Dan Dornick, number 33. While the running backs were all important in the pass offense, so too were tight ends Mike Tice, John Sawyer, and number 88, Pete Metzelaars, who was voted to the NFL All-Rookie squad. Metzelaars made great strides through the course of the season as a dependable third down receiver, while two other youngsters, Paul Johns and Byron Walker, were impressive as deep threats. Along with crafty veteran Roger Carr, number 87, Seattle had more than enough speed on the outside, suggesting a more prominent role for the long pass in the Seahawks' future. In today's game, the speed receiver is important, but so too is a possession receiver like Steve Largent. Largent ranks with the best in the business, and even in a strike-shortened year, he still led the team in receptions. It's hard to believe that it was 7 years ago when an unknown cast-off from the Houston Oilers emerged from the darkness to become the Seahawks' best offensive player, even though he didn't fit the classic mold of an NFL receiver.
I think coaches and scouts in general have a stereotype for what they want for the perfect wide receiver, and they want a guy that's going to be about 6'2", and he's going to run a 4.5 every time he is timed in the 40, and he can leap tall buildings and catch passes over the middle, and there's not a lot of those type of guys around.
In 1976, Largent joined the Seahawks, unheralded and unheard of. But it didn't take long for the clever pattern receiver from Tulsa to prove that he belonged in professional football. He didn't have sprinter speed, but with good hands and nimble moves, the rookie became the Seahawks' most productive pass catcher and a nightmare to opposing defensive backs.
Cornerbacks might underestimate the fact that I can go deep, and I think that cornerbacks come into a game thinking, hey, here's Steve Largent. He's not very big and he's not very fast. I'm just going to play him tight, and when he tries to make those 8, 9, 10-yard catches, I'm going to be right there with him. And I come down there and make a little move like I'm going to run one of those type of routes and then zip past him. And if it was a 100-yard dash, I'd get caught from behind every time. But, you know, when you've only got 40 or 50 yards and the quarterback can lay one up in the corner of the end zone, then I feel like that I've got a real good chance of getting there. Well, to tell you the truth, just playing in the NFL and the success I've enjoyed to this point has been a fantasy to me. And, you know, I feel like that I've come from a background that people never expected me to be where I'm at right now, and that's exciting. And so I feel like that I'm involved in that fantasy right now.
After 50 touchdowns and 400 catches, Steve Largent remains one of the most exciting athletes to ever play for the Seattle Seahawks. In 1982, the Seattle Seahawks fielded their best defensive unit in team history. In previous years, the Seahawks were known as an offensive power, but in '82, it was the Seattle defenders who deserved star billing. The key to their success was due in large measure to the coming of age of young veterans and an especially productive draft that yielded 3 eventual starters.
Seattle Seahawks. Seattle's first-round selection, defensive end Jeff Bryant of Clemson.
Bryant came to Seattle largely unknown, but it didn't take long for the big defensive end to make a name for himself in the Seattle front four. He joined former number 1 pick Jacob Green, number 79, who led the team in quarterback sacks while playing the other end position. While Green sacked quarterbacks and batted away passes, tackle Robert Hardy, number 75, fought off double-team blocks to pick up some sacks of his own. More support came from Mark Bell, Joe Nash, and Manu Tuiasosopo, number 74, linemen who worked in tandem with Seattle's vastly improved core of linebackers. Veterans Michael Jackson and Keith Butler, number 53, turned in solid performances and were steadying influences on rookie linebackers Bruce Schultz, number 58, Eugene Williams, and Sheldon Robinson, number 57. Together, these athletes made up Seattle's best ever linebacking unit. But the crown jewel of the defense was the Seahawks secondary, a secondary that now ranks among the finest in the NFL. Keith Simpson, John Harris, Dave Brown, and Kerry Justin played the run well. They played the pass even better, 3rd in the league in pass defense, 1st in fewest touchdowns allowed. The Seahawks' top player on defense may well be safety Kenny Easley, number 45, a man talented enough to run back kicks as well as guard against the pass. In only his 2nd year, Easley went to the Pro Bowl and became an All-Pro as well, becoming the first defensive player in team history ever to be accorded such honors. For Kenny Easley and the entire Seahawk defense, 1982 was a year to remember, and it ended appropriately with one of the most exciting games of the season. In the finale against Denver, with 3 rookies starting at linebacker, the defense was at its punishing best. But the Seahawks still trailed 11-6 in the second half, and the offense was having a run of bad luck.
Dornick gets the handoff, breaks into the open at the 20, 25, up the field to the 30, being pursued from behind. Kyle after him, he hits him, there's a fumble. The Broncos at the 30-yard line of Denver, I think, have recovered the ball.
Pete, I'm going to tell you, when it rains, it pours.
But Dan Dornick shook off the temporary setback and redeemed himself in the game's final drive. With just minutes to play and no timeouts remaining, Dave Craig hit Dornick with a critical pass. Then, with seconds to go, Craig and Roger Carr made the play that won the game.
Craig drops back to pass, strong rush, he drills one toward the end zone, touchdown Seahawks!
Seattle closed out the year with a 13-11 win over Denver. For Mike McCormick, it meant that he could return to his front office duties on a winning note. Now ahead was the task of finding the best man available to coach the team in 1983. And McCormick found just that man.
With that, I would just like to present to you the head coach of the 1983 Seattle Seahawks, Mr. Chuck Knox.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. I'm very excited about the challenge that this job presents. I feel very strongly that the Seattle Seahawks exist for one reason, and that's to win. And that everybody in the organization, janitors, secretaries, what have you, they're here for a reason. They're here to help the football players and these coaches be successful. Whatever it takes to win. And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line.
Chuck Knox is a winner and always has been. With his arrival, the Seattle Seahawks have the opportunity to bring that winning feeling to the fans and to themselves.